Hey guys, it's Megan, and in today's video, I'll be showing you a few crafts that you can make when you're bored this summer. If you can, one of the best things to do when you're bored is to get out of the house. One of my favorite places to go when I have some free time is to my local Hobby Lobby. Thank you so much to Hobby Lobby for sponsoring today's video. I swear, I could probably spend a whole day in here just looking at all the cool stuff that they have. You guys don't even know, like I come here all the time, and they have the best selection out of any craft store near me. I always know when I go to Hobby Lobby, I can always find what I need. Even if you don't have an idea for a specific project, I promise you'll find something. One of my favorite things to do during the summer when I was a kid was to make craft kits. I used to love these velvet posters, 10 out of 10 and very easy to stay in the lines. Also paint by numbers, I was always a big fan of those. And the cool thing about Hobby Lobby is they actually have craft kits for adults too. They have things like diamond dots, tie-dye kits, resin kits. I picked up a set of these clay beads at my local Hobby Lobby. Unfortunately, it's kind of been raining here all week, but what I really want to do is just sit outside and make a bunch of bracelets. I feel like that would be so much fun. Another cool project that you can do this summer is to make these wire-wrapped rock necklaces. You can use any type of rock that you want for this, but personally I wanted something a little bit prettier. So I picked up some of these amethyst gems from Hobby Lobby. I also used some jewelry pliers, 24 gauge wire, gold chain, some jump rings, and a lobster clasp. First, I cut 2 pieces of wire that were around 12 inches long. You might need more or less depending on the size of your gem. Take your 2 pieces of wire and cross them over each other. Then twist them together in the middle like this. You don't need it to be too big, maybe twist it around like 2 or 3 times. Go ahead and pick out a gem that you want to use. I chose this one that was sort of like a long oval shape. Use a small piece of tape to stick the twist in the wire to the side of the gem. This will just make it easier to wrap the wire around. Now take one wire from the first twist and one from the second and twist those together the same way. Flip your gem over and twist the loose wires together on the other side. Keep repeating this process until you get to the top. Think of it sort of like a fishing net. The goal is to have your wire make this sort of diamond-shaped pattern. Finish the charm by bending one of the wires into the middle of the gem, using your round nose pliers to create a loop. Twist some of the excess wire around the bottom of the loop and cut off any excess. I like to use my flat nose pliers to make sure that there are no sharp edges. Take one of the wires from the other side and twist it around the bottom of that loop, cutting off the excess. And again, just flatten that out. Repeat this process with the other 2 loose wires. So again, just twist it around, cut it off, and flatten it out. Repeat this with the 4th wire, and now your charm's done. Just don't forget to peel off the tape from earlier. You can turn this into all sorts of things. I made mine into a necklace by cutting a piece of chain that was 20 inches long. I added a jump ring and a lobster clasp to one side of the chain, and another jump ring to the other. Then I used a 3rd jump ring to add the rock to my necklace. You could also turn this into a keychain, or you could do smaller gems and make earrings. I also think that a bracelet would look cool, or you could make a bunch of them and turn it into a sun catcher. The second idea I came up with is to make something out of air dry clay. Air dry clay is the perfect summer project because it's something that you can spread out over multiple days. There are so many different types of clay. I picked up some of this DOS air dry clay to try out. I know that air dry clay was a huge trend on TikTok last year, and you could probably spend a whole day just scrolling through and deciding what to make. I made these storage bookends. I ended up using a whole pack of clay for this project. Before I started, I wanted to make some slip. This is basically like the glue that will hold your air dry clay pieces together. What I did was I measured a tablespoon of water, then measured out a tablespoon of air dry clay. I took my air dry clay and flattened it out as thin as possible, breaking off little pieces to add to the water. Once I got to the end, I didn't think that there was enough water, so I added about a tablespoon more. So it ended up being 2 tablespoons of water and 1 tablespoon of clay. Go ahead and let that sit for an hour or 2. If you want, you can shake it every once in a while to help combine everything, then mix everything together. To make the bookends, I rolled out my clay to be about 1/4 of an inch thick. I used a couple jumbo popsicle sticks that I hot glued on top of each other to make sure that the clay would be the same thickness. I used a lid from a cup to cut a circle from the clay. The lid that I used was about 4 inches in diameter. If you don't have a lid, you can try printing out a circle, cutting it out, and tracing around it. You can also use like a cookie cutter or something, but I didn't have one that was that big. If you need to, you can clean up the edges with an X-Acto knife. I made a mark in the middle of the circle and cut it in half. I used a ruler to sort of score the clay before I cut it. Next, roll out a second piece of clay and cut it into a rectangle that's 7 inches by 4.5 inches. Roll out a third piece of clay and cut this one so that it's 4 inches by 4.5 inches. When you're done, you should have 3 pieces that look like this. To assemble your bookend, use an X-Acto knife to gently score the 4-inch edge of your rectangle. Basically, you're just using your knife to make little X's in the clay. Do the same thing on the flat edge of your circle. Again, just use your knife to make little X's in the clay. Put some of that slip that we made earlier over the area that you scored, and attach the clay pieces together. Apparently, I don't know how to measure because I made my rectangle a little bit too big, but that's okay, I just cut off the excess. Next, take the larger rectangle and score along the 2 short edges and one of the long ones. Then take the 2 pieces that we attached earlier and score around the edges of the rectangle, around the semicircle, and again on the other edge of the rectangle. I added some more slip to the area that we scored on the larger rectangle and curved it over the other 2 pieces. I went back and tried to smooth out all the joints with my fingers the best that I could. If your clay dries a little too much, you can use slip to help fill in the gaps. You can also add slip if there are any areas where you notice cracks in the clay. Okay, so this is air dry clay, right? Technically, you're supposed to wait a few days for it to dry. Well, I waited a few days, it still wasn't completely dry, so to speed up the process, I put them in the oven. Make sure to put them in before you turn your oven on. That is super important so that the clay doesn't crack. Leave the oven door cracked open a little bit and set it to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. After it heats up, leave the clay pieces in there for 20 minutes. Then turn the oven off and leave it in there with the door cracked open until the oven cools off. And once it does, you're ready to decorate. My original plan for these was I got some of these shells from Hobby Lobby and I was gonna push them into the clay before it dried, but I decided that I wanted to paint it instead. Guys, look at these paintbrushes that I got. These are so nice. They have the little gripper on the end. I'm seriously obsessed with these. I painted my bookends with a tan base coat. Then I used some of these folk art paints to add some Matisse-inspired shapes to the curved side of each bookend. I've been obsessed with these lately. I actually used some shapes like this in my new channel banner. Not gonna lie, these kind of took a while. I mean, it wasn't really that long, like maybe an hour, but I only painted the front of each bookend because I didn't really think that I needed to paint the back, but I don't know, maybe I will. Let me know what you think. But here's how my finished clay pieces turned out. I love this idea. I think these are super fun and they can be customized to fit any decor. I'm going to use my bookends on my vanity to hold up these jewelry storage binders that I made in another video. And I think I'm going to store my makeup brushes in them. But you could also fill these with art supplies and use them to hold up your sketchbooks or something. The last idea that I came up with is to make things with seashells. This is perfect if you collect some shells on vacation over the summer. But if you can't get to the beach, you can find everything you need at your local Hobby Lobby. I picked up some of these big lion's paw seashells to make this trinket dish. I got a couple different sizes of shells, and I also picked up some of these mini ones. I also used some 2-part resin, sand, a heat gun, acrylic paint in 3 different shades of blue, and some white acrylic paint. Okay, so step 1 is going to be to mix up your resin. I used about 120 milliliters altogether. So I measured 60 milliliters of part A, then added 60 milliliters of part B, and stirred it all together. Technically, you're supposed to mix this kind of slow so that you don't get bubbles in the resin, but honestly, for this project, it doesn't really matter that much. Then I separated the resin into a few different cups and added a tiny bit of paint into each one to make the ocean colors. You really don't need much paint. Ideally, you want to use around 1 part paint and 10 parts resin so that the resin will still cure correctly. Make sure to wear gloves when you do this because it can get super messy. It's also a good idea to open a window because, not gonna lie, resin usually doesn't smell that great. So I mixed up 3 shades of blue, some white, and then I mixed them with a little bit of sand. Alright, so here's what I did. I used a popsicle stick to spread some of that sand mixture onto the curved part of the shell. Then I started adding my blue resin for the ocean. I started with my darkest blue towards the back, then the middle shade, and finally the lightest blue as you get closer to the sand. I used a heat gun to sort of blend things together and to create bubbles to make it look more like the ocean. Then I added a little bit of that white resin along the shoreline, again using my heat gun to blend it in and to create bubbles. I added a few more strips of white throughout the ocean to give it a little bit more dimension. My ocean just wanted to spill out of the shell for some reason, so I added a little bit more of that sand mixture to try to fix that. I also used some popsicle sticks to sort of hold up my shell since I may have added a little bit too much resin. But then I took some of those mini seashells and put them along the edge of the bigger shell. This part's optional, but I think it looks pretty cool. I let the resin cure, and here's how my finished project turned out. There are so many ways that you can use seashells. My mom has this mirror that she made with seashells all around it, and I remember my grandma having these little turtles that she made with them. I've also seen people paint them, turn them into jewelry, make Christmas ornaments. Let me know if you guys would watch a seashell crafts video. I feel like that would be fun. But that was everything for today's video. Make sure to let me know which project was your favorite. I think mine was the clay bookends. I definitely want to make some more clay projects this summer. Again, thank you so much to Hobby Lobby for sponsoring this video. You can find all of the supplies that I used in this video at Hobby Lobby. I'll put a link to them in the description. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. A huge thank you to my patrons whose names are on the screen right now. My merch, my website, and all my social media will be linked down below. I love you guys so much, and I will see you guys later. Bye!